We're going to spend the next half hour. You're going to have a chance to meet 3 current students, each with different backgrounds, each in different degree programs here, and each with different experiences of Wagner, and yet united by our common purpose of being committed to public service. Directly to my left is Matt Kastellec. Matt is in our PNP program. This is Matt's 3rd year at Wagner, and he's graduating in May. He was both a part-time and a full-time student. Next to Matt is Tiffany Flemming. Tiffany's in her 2nd year at Wagner, and she's also graduating in May. And Tiffany's in our Health Policy and Management program. And next to Tiffany is Emmily De Los Santos, who's in her 4th year at Wagner. She's been both a full-time student and a part-time student, and she's in our Urban Planning program. So, all these people have been admitted to Wagner. Some of you have already decided that you're coming. Others of you are comparing us to other schools. So the purpose for today is for this session is for you to understand a little bit what the Wagner student experience is like. So why don't we start with your background? Would you mind telling us where you grew up, where you went to undergrad? Are you currently working? And a little bit about why you may have chosen Wagner over other schools. And then I have some deeper questions. So Matt, would you mind starting?
Sure. So hi, I'm Matt. I am a native New Yorker. I grew up in Manhattan, and I went to the University of Michigan for undergrad. Any Wolverines? Anyone? Go Blue. Thank you. And I work full-time for an education nonprofit called Achievement Network, or ANET. And I started there right out of undergrad. I worked there for 3 years before coming to Wagner, and I'm still there now, so this is now my 6th year. And I came to Wagner while considering almost any degree program under the sun. So I was applying to MBAs, some MAs, even some more like teaching-focused kind of things up in that other school in the Heights. And ultimately, I landed on Wagner because it felt like the right combination of what I was looking for. It was a place where I could continue working and where the degree was designed to allow me to do that, and where I just felt the connection to public service much more deeply than I felt connected when I went to other admitted student days, like at MBA programs where it was like ultra competitive, everyone's in a suit, you can tell I'm wearing jeans and a sweater, which is how I prefer to be. So it just felt like the right place for me with the right combination of academics, of network, and of people, really, for what I was looking for.
Thanks, Matt. Tiffany, a little bit about your background.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Tiffany. I went to undergrad at the University of South Florida. So I'm from Orlando, Kissimmee, that area. So I came to Wagner directly out of undergrad. I currently work 2 part-time jobs as a program manager at a nonprofit, Project Sunshine, and a database administrator at Safe Water Network. Yeah, so I came to Wagner basically I made my decision directly after Admitted Students Day, and I felt like Wagner just was the place that I wanted to be because it seemed like the people, exactly like Matt said, were more laid back, but you understood what the mission was for being here. It wasn't like an MBA program, which I did apply to as well. It was more laid back, relaxed, and made you feel like you were at home.
Tiffany, would you mind sharing other schools that you were looking at?
Yeah, so I got accepted into Rutgers, UPenn, and FIU in Florida.
Great, thanks. Emily.
Hi, everyone. I am Emily De Los Santos. First and foremost, I am a first-generation American, and I'm a first-generation graduate student. I'm also from New York. I was born and raised in Washington Heights, and I now live in East Harlem. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. I went to undergrad at Skidmore College. Anyone into the private liberal arts schools? And I majored I got a BA in sociology with a focus in social justice. Around the time that I was finishing my undergrad, I knew I wanted to pursue a master's in urban planning, and I didn't know though quite exactly where, how, and what focus. But I had several schools in mind. I decided to take a break and work in the field of community development and housing, affordable housing, which is my interest. And fast forward to 4.5 years later, at the company where I worked, it's a nonprofit called Community Solutions, but I worked in their local office in Brownsville, Brooklyn, so the Brownsville Partnership. 2 of my colleagues went to Wagner. And one got her master's in urban planning, and the other one got her master's in public administration. And quite frankly, I kind of was told I'm going to Wagner without much of a fight. The other school I did consider was Hunter, but I knew that I wanted to go to an urban planning school that focused on policy. Through the work that I had done, I realized that that was more of an interest of mine versus the planning or the design element. And so I chose Wagner because it aligned perfectly with my passion of policy, but then secondly, the program structure, similar to what Matt said, accommodated full-time professionals. So I started as a full-time employee, and most of the classes were in the evening, which worked well with my schedule.
Great, thank you. So I was talking to some of you that were at the event last night about, someone asked me, is Austin here? I don't want to put you on the spot. Austin asked me last night, why Wagner? And instead of trying to sell Wagner, I punted and I said, here's 3 things you should look for in graduate school. And then you decide if we're right for you. So I think when you're looking for a graduate school education, you should be looking for 3 types of work: framework, fieldwork, and network. So let's dig a little bit deeper into those 3 things, and maybe it'll become evident why I think that those 3 types of work are important, regardless of what graduate school that you are looking for or looking at. So framework is the ability to learn new things, to learn new frameworks, to be able to frame the world in a different way than what you already have. Will you gain intellectual knowledge, the ability to look and respond to the world in a brand new way than what you currently have? And what some of this actually means is that you may need to unlearn some things that you learned growing up or in undergraduate school. So will you gain new frameworks through your graduate education? So I'm going to ask our panel, have you learned new frameworks? Has your Wagner experience shifted the way you look at the world, the way you ask certain types of questions, your assumptions? And if so, can you expand on those? So Tiffany, do you want to start us off?
So Wagner definitely has changed my way of thinking just in everyday life. Like, it has me analyzing things that I don't even need to be analyzing. Like, but it comes from all the classes that I've been taking. So all the classes that I've taken actually apply to what I'm doing in my roles currently, but I wouldn't have thought that just because they can be applied anywhere. So from management and leadership, like, you can be a leader anywhere, even if your position is an associate. Like, make your voice be heard. So I've started at my job as a program associate instead of a program manager, but because I voiced my opinions and I felt like things were wrong and things needed to be changed and there was different ways of doing things. Just from the frameworks that I learned in the class and the different books we read and the different articles we read, I boosted my position and now I'm a program manager. And they really appreciated anything that I said and anything that I continue to say, just from what I learned. So I don't know.
That's great. Emily, you want to share some thoughts?
Yes. So I will say that there are some frameworks that I've never learned of, but I will also highlight that Wagner has also enhanced a lot of the frameworks. So as I mentioned, I was in community development, but my first position in my job was a housing advocate. So I worked specifically on the ground in Brownsville, which is in the southeast neighborhood, southeast neighborhood in Brooklyn. And I was working with families on the ground, understanding their issues, their challenges. They were all families living in public housing and were at risk of eviction for one reason or another. And so what I understood very well at that point was, 1, how to talk to people, 2, how to listen to people, but 3, really understand what's going on the ground. I wasn't quite sure how to understand the macro problems facing neighborhoods like Brownsville and other ones across the city. However, when I did enter Wagner, the theories, the planning theories, the frameworks, the courses, did in fact provide me with the framework that I needed to have a better macro understanding of societal injustices, of housing policy, and what does that look like. And with that said, I was then able to take the information that I was learning while being at Wagner back to my employment and really move forward ideas and think more thoroughly about how do we shift even the way that we work. Mm-hmm. And then similarly to Tiffany, I also was promoted, but also realized I wanted to move away from the direct service and became a project manager in our real estate and community development team, and really was able to apply a lot of the planning frameworks to that.
You know, it's not unusual that we often enter the field of public service in direct service, right? We sort of start, we want to be a social worker, we want to be working with our case manager, we want to be working directly with the population with whom we are serving. And many people, for them, that is a valuable and lifelong experience. Wagner's actually not, we're not training you to be clinicians. We're actually training you to, as Emily said, we're training you to both to use the micro, but to get better understanding of the macro, of the systems perspective, of how organizations function, about the research and the policy and how decisions actually get made to impact not the individual, but instead a society, communities, and cities around the world. Matt, sorry.
Yeah. I would build on that of, I think there were a lot of frameworks that I vaguely knew or could see, especially one of the things I realized in coming to Wagner was actually how well run of an organization I was already at, things that happened behind the scenes. So I knew we had a strategic plan, I thought it looked cool, but then actually getting to learn what makes up a strong strategic plan and realizing oh yeah, we checked a lot of those boxes, and also here's 3 we maybe are missing, and similarly feeling confident in my ability to voice that because it came backed with the experience of all the other students in my class, of my professor, my adjunct who was teaching that class around strategic planning. And then I think also bringing brand new frameworks, I took a class in risk management, which was something I think I would only consider a very not even technical, but corporate kind of area of oh, we don't manage risk, we work with people, they're not at risk. But we are also a $20 million organization, of course there's risk involved. And so being able to, my actual final project in that course was building a risk management plan for my organization that I was able to share with my CFO and actually see a couple of those pieces be implemented. So that's sort of cheating and getting to the fieldwork question too, but definitely a place of a framework I would have never considered or never considered its relevancy to me in my work until I got to Wagner.
That's great. So Matt gave me a nice segue into the second type of work. So if the first work that I think you should be looking for is field work in your graduate education, the next work is framework. The next work is field work. Will you be able to apply what you're learning in the classroom to the field? And will what you're experiencing in the field help inform your discussions in the classroom? So all 3 of you have worked in some way, shape, or form while you're at school. Would you mind sharing with us how either the frameworks or build upon how the frameworks that you've learned in the classroom impacted your ability to work in the field, and vice versa, actually, how bringing real-world experience influences and hopefully enhances the discussion in the classroom? Emily?
So I think that one of the main reasons why I decided to kind of take some time off was for that same reason, was to provide experience, my own experience, but also learn from experiences of others in the classroom. I will say that one of the other main reasons why I came to Wagner is because you have an opportunity to be taught by practitioners, people that are in the field, people that are working, and that can bring that experience and provide case studies that you can then apply the frameworks and apply the theory to. The first couple of years, I definitely raised my hand a lot more than more people in classrooms, because what you'll find if you're not from New York is that we speak in acronyms. And so a lot of our city agencies, we won't say the full name, we just say three letters. And I knew that because I was in the field, right? So I understood what NYCHA meant, New York City Public Housing Authority, HPD. I know what all that things mean. So I was able to really provide a lot of insight during the classrooms, and then definitely speak with the practitioners and professors post classes to talk further about the work that they're doing and then build even further relationships.
Matt?
Yeah, I think the two-way flow has definitely been a really valuable experience for me the whole time, whether it's even the core course of financial management. Again, I could look at a budget and could read the headline on the slide that was like, we're in a good financial position, but actually being able to understand the finances of my own organization or of other organizations that maybe I was interested in working at or that my friends were interested in working at and wanted to know what's going on behind the scenes, that type of thing. And I would build on the working with practitioners, that risk management class I mentioned. The two women who ran that were part of a report for an agency whose name I'm forgetting, but over $400 million organization that was a public service provider here in the city that went under because of financial mismanagement, and was one of the rallying calls of we need to deal with this as a sector. So definitely that two-way and my ability to bring in the strengths that's on my organization to flag things, or even in my capstone right now, being able to lean on how I've seen my organization do things to provide help to another younger, smaller organization, has been extremely valuable.
So with the fieldwork part, I definitely see that my time here at Wagner has definitely had an impact on the work that I have done and also that I am doing currently. So before I got my position at Project Sunshine, I was a health policy intern at the Fortune Society, which is a nonprofit in Long Island City. And it was so funny that you mentioned financial management because in the basic financial management class, he had an example on the board, and it was the budget sheet of my organization. And he was like, yeah, what's wrong here? And I was like, huh. So I was like, I think this kind of should be brought up. This is kind of important. So it was just very interesting to analyze that budget and be like, yeah, this is where a lot of the work that I'm interested in doing and doing at the organization came from, where the health funds came from and how there was no health funds and everything like that. So it was great to use just what I learned in that specific class to bring it back to my internship and let them know hey, look what I found and how can it be changed. So it definitely, just with that example, it shows things can be really applied without you even knowing it. You wouldn't think that being at an organization at first that maybe the budget sheet should be something that is important, that can help you build and grow, and that's something you should be interested in.
That's great. So we have frameworks, fieldwork. The third type of work I think you should be looking for in a graduate program is your network. So many people believe that undergraduate is sort of about finding out who you are as an individual. We actually believe that graduate school, and particularly a professional school, should help you define who you are as a professional. So who you choose to go to school with, who you'll be surrounded with, will be part of your network forever. You're part of your professional network forever, regardless of which program you're in. So I'm curious, how has the Wagner Network worked for you? Current students, alums, faculty, and what is the community like here for you? How have you tapped in to the broad Wagner network? Emily, you're nodding your head. You want to get us started?
So as David mentioned, I've been here 4 years. And when I first started, the only people I knew were the urban planning students in my core classes. Quite frankly, you work 40 hours a week or more. You have class from 6:45 to 8:30. You are rushing out the door after classes. And so I got to meet some people through group work. With that said, though, I did definitely try to attend several events on campus. Our social groups are very different than kind of the undergraduate social groups that meet like weekly. Our social groups are very much more professional, development oriented. And so they work very hard on bringing events that are specific to the development of our profession and our interests. And so I did attend several of the IPSA events or BSA events, and you guys will know all these acronyms, Black Student Association. There's a lot of social groups, but a lot of those groups, and I felt extremely welcome, even though I didn't know anyone. And so fast forward to 2.5 years later, almost 3, I decided to apply for a fellowship that's a school-wide fellowship. So it's called the Social Sector Leadership Diversity Fellowship. And in fact, I got to meet a lot of Wagner students through that. And that was actually very great. And I will say that my network has increased dramatically when I decided to quit my job in the fall of last year. And so I was able to, one, begin a job on campus working with the Office of Career Services, which then pretty much gave me an actual desk at the Puck building. So I had somewhere to be, somewhere to work and to actually meet other people. But more importantly, I was able to expose myself and to attend more events. And I will say that in comparison to other schools, we don't have like a central building, right? Like we don't have a building where all your classes are held and all of the administration offices are held. However, the Puck building is where community is built. Faculty is there, staff is there, administration is there, in the ages of 2 floors, which is great. And you can walk in and everyone will say hello to you. You can talk to people. You can peek your head into a professor's office to see whether or not they're there, or even if it's not their office hours. So that really is a space where I build a lot of community. And that started truly last fall.
Well, I feel like with networking, you cannot network at Wagner. I remember when I first got to New York, and I was born in New York, but I left when I was young. But it was just so weird. Like, I'm sitting in the Puck building, and someone's, like, sitting next to me, like, comes and sit next to me. I'm like, well, what are you doing? But it's kind of just like, these people are just so friendly. Like, you start conversations, and you don't understand how they can benefit you. I got my position at Safe Water Network from a Wagner alumni, and she's like great. And then also like someone else who worked there went to Wagner, and I was like, okay, you guys are like everywhere, and it's great to know that people are there to support you, even in like you said, like when you work in student groups, which you do a lot of group work. You get to know those people that you're working with, and somehow they'll benefit you, whether professionally or personally in your life. And it's just never ending with any class, any organization you join, any presentation you go to. It's always just going to be a communication and a bond that ends up forming just because you are going to Wagner.
Yeah, and I would say, for me as someone who's coming in working full-time and knowing I'd likely stay that, and I imagine some of you are like that too, like some of the short-term networking, like finding a position, finding an internship that I know has been available to many of my peers has not been like as crucial to me. And at the same time, I've been thinking about the long-term network I'm building. So whether that's professors who I've really engaged with, taken multiple classes with, like helped do their grading to get to know them better, to get to know what that's like, as people I can turn to in the shorter and longer term of like, I need a recommendation letter, or like, tell me what you think about this job. Like, does this seem like the right fit? Because they know me and they know what I'm good at, and they know the field. And I would say I have been surprised by how deep of a connection I've made to many of my group project mates, going back to some of my best friends I made in my very first class, previously known as Managing Public Service Organizations, which I think is called something else.
Management and Leadership.
Management and Leadership, where you'd have like a big group project for most of it. And a few of those folks, like we still have a running group chat, even though they graduated last year. So there's a lot of, I think, both like longer term friendships I was not anticipating making or didn't feel like I needed, I would say, as someone who also was previously living here, had a full-time job, have friends, full shebang. But you kind of get anyways.
I would like to add that, and I'm kind of plugging because I work for the Office of Career Services, but NYU has the Wasserman office, which is the Office of Career Services for all of NYU. Wagner is unique because we have our own Office of Career Services. So when I decided to leave my job and began to think about, okay, what do I do next? I knew the field that I wanted to get into, so moving away from project management and community development, but entering the financing sector of community development. I wasn't sure how to do that. Fortunately, I have a great mentor who's like, hey, we're hiring at my company. It's a community development financial institution. Would you want to be an intern with us? So I haven't had an interview in 6 years. So I was extremely nervous. But what I was able to do, and the opportunity that I had, was speak to a career service advisor and talk through kind of the questions that I had, the uncertainties that I had about this interview, about the questions they may ask me. And so that's one thing that to add to the building of network amongst your peers, amongst your relationship with professors, you also then have this opportunity to work with specifically advisors on your career development and think through what opportunities there are. In addition to that, we also have a really great alumni relationship too, alumni office, right? A team. And Tom Hernandez runs that. He's great. So if you ever have questions, he's a great person to talk to. Like, hey, I heard about this alumni person who works here. Can I get in contact with this person? He can probably put you in contact easily versus having to go through, a full plethora of emails of NYU graduates who've left many years ago. So that's another plug.
Thanks for sharing that plug for both OCS and alumni relations. So I have one last question for you, and feel free to duck it or answer it. For whom is Wagner not a great fit, and for whom might Wagner be a really good fit?
I could start. I think it's no surprise that from the three of us, what you heard, there was like a clarity of vision of why we're here. Mm-hmm. There's examples of like place of growth, and I think it's because Wagner's a place where I found the people who are the most satisfied and the most successful are the people who are willing and able to drive their own learning and their own development. It's not a place where you're like, if you just skate by, just show up to class, just like kind of put in the bare minimum effort, where you'll get a lot back, I think. It really does take that connection to the field, to like, are you applying things? Are you bringing stuff back from where you are working or where you're interning to your classrooms? Like, do you care about being here, frankly, or not? Or are you just here because you want 3 additional letters at the end of your email signature? Yeah, you could come here. You all got in, and maybe some of you that's what you want, and you probably could get through the program. But I don't think you would get as much out of it as you would hope, or as your classmates would. And the reason would be is that your classmates who put in the time, who put in the effort, who maybe find 1 or 2 student groups that they really care about, they dig in, find the professor to connect to. Those are the folks in my circles and my groups and for myself that actually, feel like they made the right choice, even 3-4 years later, to be here. So I think if you're looking for something that's like structured to the point where you can kind of zone out and still like get a lot out of it, or still like end up in the same spot, this is not the right program for you.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that. So I think that Wagner is for people who want to get out of their comfort zone. Especially if you're in New York, you're already from New York, but you want to have a different experience, meet tons of different people, you have to get out of your comfort zone. Even coming from different states and different parts of the world, I feel like you need to get out of your comfort zone, not only because you're at Wagner, but because you are in New York City. There are tons of opportunities in New York City, but there are so many opportunities within this world that New York City brings to you. I think just not being comfortable of where you're at and who you're with, and branching out and learning new people is why Wagner would be a great fit for you, because you have to be open.
I agree with both. I think that Wagner truly is a place for someone who is willing to push some boundaries and not feel uncomfortable doing it, or quite frankly, it's okay to feel uncomfortable, but willing to walk into a room and understand what the culture is and where there may be some gaps, and how to assess that in a respectful but also strategic way, right? And I say this because I know a lot about New York City politics, and we'll learn a lot about New York City politics, and it's a tough space to be in. But it doesn't mean that you can't enter that field and work well to change it. And I will say, lastly, 4 years ago, when I came, whether it was the admitted day or the event that took place last night, but a student said that the Wagner is an institution that is moving forward, or something along the lines of moving the public sector forward in the frontier, or something like that. And I can surely say that 4 years later, I feel that I am moving the public service. I'm in the public service field, but a person who is moving it forward in a very strategic, intentional, and passionate way to serve, I think, both the end user and many others who may not be identified as the end user, right? I think that there's a lot to unpack there, but thinking of it from still a specific or a micro perspective, having that understanding as well as the macro perspective. So there's a balance of having to maintain when you're in this field, and I think Wagner does a great job at helping us with that balance.